time, we'll call to order the regular city council meeting for October 24th, 2022. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk Deaton, could you let the roll call show that all council members are present? And we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from October 10th, 2022. Councilmember Kennedy.
I'll move the minutes.
I'll support.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. We have no bills this evening, so we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Councilmember Dild.
I'll move the agenda.
I'll support.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Tonight's consent agenda includes Ladies' Night Out, November 11th, 2022, and donation of park bench for McCaddy Park. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the consent agenda as presented by the mayor.
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we will open the floor for public comment. Please remember to state your name and address, and remember that we have a 2-minute time limit. If no one else is going to speak this evening, I'm going to have Mr. Richards come down for his public comment, and as long as no one up here has any objections, I'm going to allow Mr. Richards his 2 minutes from the first public comment and the second, so he won't have to navigate up and down the ramp a second time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Carl Richards, 390 Lennox Street. I'll try to go as fast as I can with a few little notes here. Okay, first up, I want to mention something that's you might consider useless information, but I hope not, okay? Oh, thank you, Paul. Okay, on the south side of this lot, there's what was 3 private-owned lots that were sold to the city years ago by Julie Zemke, who was later clerk of the city for a number of years. And on 2 of those lots were houses, I believe, and there's 2 large walnut trees on those lots. They're both very rotten in the bottom. They might stand for 50 more years, but since I was a registered walnut buyer once upon a time, I thought I'd relay it to council. The liability factor is quite high, in my opinion, of those 2 trees. They have no log value, no intrinsic. There's only like 8 inches at the most of wood holding at the base on those trees. They're a liability for the city, in my opinion. Okay, move on to the next item. It's kind of dark in here. Okay. Oh, incidentally, at the 501 property, which is yours, those walnut trees are not black walnut, they're white walnut. They were planted there years ago by Ivan Schote, who built the little house that we tore down. Number 2, well, I won't have enough time. Okay, number 4, we got a new business coming in town, okay? I've already mentioned one previously. Where the bookstore was, okay? They haven't told me what it's going to be, but it's extensively being done, and it's not going to be a pizza parlor. That's what we are all very much hoping for, something other than that. And down on the end of the bike path at Dixboro Road, this is the next item, you have a flock of wild turkeys. Never had that before, okay, in my recollection. and along with our regular deer population, there's about 5 to 7 of them, okay? I've been taking apples down there and feeding them a little bit. But basically, they'll move on at some later date. Okay, thank you very much. I'll get to other items subsequently at the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. As long as no one else is looking to speak at public comment, we will close the floor for public comment and move on to the discussion of downtown with DDA Director Nate Mack.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So to start off with, I want to talk about the Shop Small event or promotion that Oakland County is doing. You all have a couple of flyers and a paper bag. We received these items from Oakland County on Friday, so that obviously wasn't included in my report to you, but I wanted to make you aware of the promotion and the public aware of the promotion that is happening. So what they're doing for Shop Small Saturday, the month of November, so November 1st through the 26th, you can take a selfie in front of a business that you think is a local gem. So it has to be a local business in South Lyon, and then you can enter that into a contest to win. First prize will get $1,000, and second prize will get $500. So they were also gracious enough to give us these lovely little selfie frames. We have 2 of them, so hopefully we'll be able to, and I'll show everybody else. So as you're shopping downtown or anywhere else in the city, if you see one of these, you can take a selfie with them. It's just a good promotional piece to get people to shop in our community. But we received about 1,000 of the bags, and then a few of the different of those flyers as well, a few hundred of each of those big and smaller items. So we'll be passing those out for the Shop Small Saturday event. The event starts November 1st, so we'll be getting these materials out to businesses prior to that kicking off. Our farmers market season is winding down. The last week is going to be this Saturday. I want to thank and congratulate Diana for the incredible job she's done this year with the farmers market, doubling the number of vendors pretty much on a weekly basis from the first week. So my hat's off to her. She's done an awesome job with that. We do have our farmers market, our winter farmers market, excuse me. That's going to be taking place on November 19th. I spoke with Diana this morning, and she has 32 vendors signed up for the November and December indoor farmers markets. We're still working to get people for the subsequent dates, but it's off to a strong start. The next item is the downtown trick or treat and pup parade is taking place this Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. The parade is going to be beginning at 6 p.m. this year instead of 7 p.m. as it has in years past. Registration will begin at 5 p.m. That's in the farmers market parking lot just south of the Draft Street building. Let's see here. I should say thank you for passing the road closures for Ladies Night Out as well. But that event is taking place on November 11th. But there's also going to be a new option for people looking to attend the Fall Ladies Night Out. Solera is offering daycare services during the event time for the cost of $36. So if you're interested in that, you don't have daycare for the event, you can reach out to Solera. They've got some activities planned for the time slot that Ladies Night is happening, which is 5 to 9 p.m. And with that, that's the end of my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Dill, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. I saw the daycare, which is awesome. Do they have ages? Did they mention what the ages are?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
I think it's up to like 12 or 13, something like that.
I mean, like low, how, like.
Oh, I'm not
babies?
sure. I'm not sure how young they go. Yeah.
And then, do they have a limit? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, that's all right. I just wondered. The selfie thing that you were saying, I didn't hear quite what you were saying. You said there was going to be a contest for it.
Yep.
Is it the best one, or what was it the most interesting, or is it just pulled out of a hat? Or?
I think it's just pulled out of a hat. Yeah.
And the other thing was, do we have any, is there any way to figure out like the success of vendors at the farmer's market? Like, is there any kind of data or anything that we can get, or even like, just polling the vendors afterwards? We're just wondering if they made money, if they felt it was successful.
So Diana does talk to some of the vendors to kind of see how they've done. She doesn't ask for specific dollar amounts. That is something that you could do, and some people may be comfortable giving that out. Others may not be. But I feel like the best way in lieu of having actual dollar amounts is if they're coming back to the farmer's
Right,
market.
yeah.
And if it's not successful, it's not worth their time, then they're not going to come
Right.
back.
Yeah, and I didn't really mean dollar amounts, but just if they felt, they were being successful, if they felt like there were enough, people there or whatever.
Yeah, and I kind of hear, how people do on a weekly basis. Some say the car show is really good for them. Some say, we get a lot of people coming through, but not a lot of buyers, which
Right.
is good in turn. You have those people coming back to the farmer's market. So yeah, I don't know.
That's fine. I just
Is that
wondered-
okay? Is that what you were looking
Yeah,
for?
yeah, just
okay.
wondered if there was any way to evaluate it. And I wasn't even saying that we should, I just wondered if there was. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Councilmember Kibble.
I was curious, I think that frame thing is a nice enticement to get some activity of just residents that are shopping and things. Is there something a little bit more formalized rather than just having the two, are they going to be here or leaning against buildings downtown, or what's
So
the likelihood?
my idea is to put them in different stores throughout the 26 days of the promotion. So as people are shopping in there, they can take a selfie with it if they want.
Can they take it and walk to another store to take pictures in front of that?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And secondly, are there going to be any food vendors once it transitions to the VFW, the farmer's market, excuse me?
So I want to say that we are looking for food vendors. I don't know if there have been any that have committed as of yet, but that is something that we're
I didn't know
definitely-
VFW, since they serve food, if that would be
Yeah, and that's another option too.
Awesome.
We've discussed that with
problem
them.
for them to have food trucks there, I don't know. Okay, all right, thanks, that's
Yep.
all I had.
Councilmember Hanson, go ahead.
So I was off last meeting, out sick, but I was very pleased to hear about the electric vehicle chargers getting installed. Is DT reaching out to you or Paul directly, I guess, to kind of give you a heads up as far as an ETA?
So yeah,
the install, or-
I'm working with the vendor as well as DTE electrician to try and get them in place soon as we can. So
Is there any prep work that we can do, like ordering vehicle charging signs or anything like that, that we've been kind of working on before the green light from DTE, or?
we can look into doing that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I would love to hear when we do finally get word from DT about the process. And I'm speaking from personal experience from installing solar. DT is sometimes not always the fastest, especially if they're repairing storm damage or something like that. So just very excited to hear about that update. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Councilmember Mosier.
Regarding the farmer's market, have you considered maybe doing a questionnaire for the vendors to see how they feel about it?
Yeah, like a
Yeah,
end of
it's
season
been
survey
done in
or-
the past, not every year, but if there's things that need improvement, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it.
Yeah.
Was it good for them? I mean, I don't think you have time to get something like that for Saturday,
I could try.
but I mean, it might be worthwhile looking into.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be good to have that feedback as well,
Yeah.
so that we can continue to improve the market.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nate.
All right, thank you.
Move on to the fire chief report tonight with Chief Thorington.
Good evening. We are currently at 872 incidents for this calendar year. Our ladder truck is mostly built right now. We're actually flying out tomorrow morning. Deputy Fire Chief Weir, Captain Armstrong, and myself to do the final inspection, go through it with a fine-tooth comb, get a little training on it, and then they'll do the final repairs and bring it back to Charlotte for the final install of the shelves and the lettering and things like that. So it's getting closer. At the same time, we are looking at selling the current ladder truck through Brindley Mountain Fire Apparatus. They work with our current CSI, who does our repairs, and it's also the sales company for the new truck. So we're familiar with them, they're familiar with us. They have a 10% fee, which is pretty standard in the industry. Not a lot of them out there that sell those specialized trucks. So we're going through the appraisal process right now with that. And lastly, our floors in the station are complete, and our concrete craft completed. They're pretty shiny, they look brand new, so it seemed like it worked out fine. So, that's all I have.
All right. Anyone got anything for Chief tonight? Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
So Chief, how are we set for smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, moving into the heating season now? Or just wonder if we have some to offer to the residents for installation?
We have a handful of smoke detectors left. We have no CO. I'm working with the state right now to get through a grant-funded program to receive 10-year battery smoke alarms, wired smoke alarms, and carbon monoxide. So hopefully that goes through pretty
And hopefully
quickly.
that works out.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Councilmember Hanson, go ahead.
Have you been able to install the, I believe it's an apparatus that we had approved a few meetings back as far as the fire hydrants so that they didn't, the cap didn't release the pressure so that the cap
Yes.
went, okay,
The DPW has been working on it for us.
okay.
I know our fire marshal's been installing it as he's been going on as well. I'm not sure where they're at in the process. But I know they're going out.
Well, I mean, changing temperatures and 70 degrees, and then it'll probably be 30 tomorrow, but yeah, figured I'd ask, so.
This is the good time to change them too, because it's cooler, they're not pressurized. So we have them until now, until next summer before it's real dangerous again.
Cool.
Yep.
Great. All right, thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Move on to the police chief report. Lieutenant Baki filling in tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. Just got a couple of things to talk about today. The 29th, we've got our drug take back, which is we encourage everybody to be coming in about 10 a.m. to 2 to discard their unused and unwanted drugs. Then we're going to go ahead and take those over to the DEA, which disposes of them. So we do this throughout the year, but this is the time where we are now able to get rid of all of our boxes because we store them up over time. So we encourage everybody to do that, to come in for their unused drugs. We also have the Witches Hat Run on the 29th. Just information, they're going to be mostly on the sidewalks and on the rail trail. And I just want to remind everybody, the 31st trick-or-treating, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It'll be citywide. We will be out like we normally do every 31st. So we should have, I'm hoping to have 4 or 5 of our cars out there delivering treats as well to the kids as we go through the subdivisions. So, and that's all I got.
Great, great. Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that I had an opportunity to run into some individuals that are moving into the South Lyon community, and they're moving from New York. And actually, the gentleman is from Manhattan. And I just wanted to let you know that they spent some time in our city prior to making a decision that this is where they wanted to be. And they listed for me all the benefits that they saw in living in the South Lyon community. And the number one benefit that they saw was safety. They went through the neighborhoods. They looked and noticed that people were able to park their cars. They weren't damaged. They weren't botched in. They saw bikes out in front of, people's garages, assuming that, they felt safe enough to leave, toys out, things like that. And to a young family that is coming from New York and wanting to expand their family, their number one priority was safety. So I was talking to them and told them we had a great, great police department, very friendly. And so I just wanted to let you know that Chief Sovic really set that tone. And I know that you're right on track to continue with that way of policing in our community, because it's paying incredible dividends. In fact, talk to any realtor and they'll tell you it's real hard to find a house for sale in South Lyon.
It
And
is.
there's a reason why.
Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that. And
Yeah.
yes, Chief Sobick really set the bar high for me. But we're going to continue. We already have a plan in place, so we're going to keep on going and do what we're doing. So
Safety was number one to this family.
I'm really happy to hear that.
Safety was number one. They must have said it 5 times. It's important for us to live in a safe community. It didn't seem to bother them about anything else.
Yeah,
It was safety. Yeah, so,
thank you.
no, thank you.
Councilmember Kibble, and then I'll come to you, Councilmember Kennedy.
I just want to get on board with the whole idea with the drug pickup thing. When you're watching TV and you see, this isn't, specific to us, but the idea of putting the drugs in the toilet or something, where you very well can end up tainting the water supply around here and that. All that stuff is really very important to dodge. So I really love the fact that we're being responsible in collecting that stuff and getting it out of the potential hands of kids that might end up, stumbling onto it or whatever. So I just think that that's a great idea, and you guys have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, yes, it's very effective. We do have at least 2-3 times a week, if not more, that people come in with their unused drugs, and I'd be happy to
We
help.
have a great deal of seniors too, so I mean.
Correct,
you know,
correct.
I think that they'd probably go switch pharmacy stuff on a regular basis as their health changes, so,
Yes.
well, thank you.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
So, Chief, just to reemphasize, based on the discussion we had earlier, these are unused prescription drugs. You don't want their aspirin, Tylenol, or Motrin. That goes in the trash.
We work hard enough, we compromise, right? So I get a lot of vitamins sometimes, or I get something that could be put somewhere else. Depending on what they've got, we can accommodate. The main thing we're looking for are prescription drugs, especially the opioids, the Vicodins, the Percocets, the psychosomatic drugs. Those are the ones, the controlled ones is what we want as well, and priority, because that gets them off to the street into somewhere where it can be disposed of properly. So, but yeah, we have taken other stuff in the past, but we're looking for those type of controlled substances to get out of the Publix if they're not being used by the prescribed person. So, but you're correct.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Great update. We have no unfinished business this evening, so we'll move on to new business. Number 1, resignation of Chris Sovic as police chief.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Last year, Chief Sovic announced that he would be retiring in the fall of 2022. We received notification from Chris that his last day with the city of South Lyon as police chief will be November 30th. I'd like to personally thank Chief Sovic for his 30-plus years of service to our community. His leadership, experience, and his humor will be missed by everyone who had the opportunity to work with him. Therefore, the city of South Lyon will be hiring a new police chief to take over on December 1st. Over the last several months, I've been having discussions with Lieutenant Doug Bakke about this position of police chief. And based upon those discussions, it is my intention to promote Lieutenant Doug Bakke to be the new police chief for the city of South Lyon, beginning December 1st, 2022. Information you have in your packet is a memo dated October 18th from Chief Sovic, indicating his retirement intentions. And the possible course of action tonight is accept this resignation of Chris Sovic and to wish him well in his retirement.
Councilmember Dill?
I will sadly make the motion to accept the resignation of Chief Chris Sovic.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
When he's here.
We don't get to say anything, but
Right.
okay.
City Clerk Deaton, could you please lead us in a roll call vote?
Kibble,
Yes.
Moser,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes?
Kurzweil,
Reluctantly, yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Dill,
Yes.
Pelchat.
Yes.
Chris Sovic will be at our next city council meeting for additional discussion probably on this topic.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that motion passes. And we'll move on to first reading of ordinance to amend the South Lyon Code of Ordinances, Chapter 34, Article 2, Downtown Development Authority Ordinance.
Our city attorney is coming down. I'll briefly introduce it. It is the first reading to amend the South Lyon Code of Ordinances, Chapter 34, Article 2, Downtown Development Authority Ordinance, the Recodified Tax Increment Finding Public Act 57 of 2018 provides that the chief executive officer shall make appointments to fill vacancies on the DDA. The DDA bylaws indicate that the chief executive officer of the city shall make appointments to fill the vacancy on the DDA. Section 4.2 of the city charter provides that the mayor is the chief executive officer. The Downtown Development Authority Ordinance, Chapter 32, Article 2, defines the city manager as the chief executive officer, and as such authorizes the managers to make appointments to fill the DDA. This amendment reconciles the DDA ordinance with the act and updates references to the act. And the city attorney is here to answer any questions you may have regarding this first reading of the ordinance.
Not much more to say.
Right.
Except that this is really just housekeeping.
Yeah.
You may have noticed that the last appointment that was made was done jointly by the mayor and the city manager, and that was just to avoid any issues. This really just cleans it up.
Great. Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
Thank you. I move to approve the first reading of the ordinance, amending the Downtown Development Authority ordinance to make it consistent with state law.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kurtzwell, supported by Councilmember Hanson. Do we have any further discussion? City Clerk Deaton, could you please lead us in a roll call vote?
Dilg,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kurzweil,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Moser,
Yes.
Kibble,
Yes.
Elchat.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. New business number 3 this evening, discussion of potential uses for ARPA funds.
Earlier this year, we discussed the ARPA funds that the city of South Lyon will receive as part of the American Rescue Act. I've met with department heads to see there are potential uses for these particular funds within each department. The city still hasn't received definitive uses of these funds, but I do think it's important to prioritize the use of these funds. Some of the suggested uses by department heads were equipment that was needed within departments, imaging cameras, software, vehicles, replacement of city signage, improvements to buildings or facilities, included storage building at DPW, and other improvements, including the security cameras and equipment. I'd recommend tonight, after taking council's suggestions, we develop a comprehensive list and attach corresponding cost, and come back to a future meeting and prioritize a list based upon need and the impact to the community and the available funding. Patricia is here to go over some of the guidelines that have been received regarding the American Rescue Act plan and discussed potential already approved projects within other communities, as well as we'll be marking down some of the items that you are considering tonight also.
Thank you, Patricia.
Good evening.
Yep. Did you have anything you wanted to lead with?
I really don't. In your packet, we put, one was the outline. It's really just a revision of the one I provided in April during our budget process, just with some updated guidance. And then on the other side was some projects that I was able to find within the state of Michigan at the top, municipalities, and how those funds were utilized and approved by the government. And then there was very little for the state of Michigan, so I apologize. I really tried to get more data. And then for outside the state of Michigan, other communities all over from Alaska to Florida, I was looking for projects, things that have been approved. There was a big common theme was safe drinking water, water systems, infrastructure, removing lead pipes. That was across the board in almost every state that I looked at. And then also quite a few communities had done additional pay to improve fire departments, especially those that had combination or paid on call departments such as ourselves, to recruit additional members to kind of up what the minimum wage was. Those were the most common. Otherwise, I just found things are kind of across the board.
Councilmember Dill, go ahead and lead us off.
I just wanted to mention that I did talk with Representative Slotkin today.
Yes.
And she promised, she said she is sorry that we're struggling with this, and she promised us a contact that she will give to you and Paul that will be
Wonderful.
able to help us know what we can apply for so we're not stuck with the bill.
That's
So
great.
she said this week for sure, she told her staff to make sure we had that number.
That's
So I'll
great.
get that
Thank
for
you.
Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
There's a mandate for replacing a lot of the signage out in communities, and it seems woefully underserved. I know that there was like a deadline, and I think it expired like 5 years ago, didn't it?
For the reflective type of signage
Yes,
you're talking about, yeah, and we've met those particular guidelines. And additional signs that we order, we always replace with those signs. But there's signs that are probably most like 20 or 30 years old were the old ones. But I know it appears that we've made other replacements over the years. And every once in a while they decide they're going to change something else within the act and the ASHTO standards and say, okay, now you must have it reflected on both sides and be available or be seen from 2 feet under and 10 feet over or something like that. So I will check with the department and find out what they've done in the last so many years to ensure that we do have enough of those signs replaced, so we don't fall into a category of having some that are not meeting the standards from 5 years ago or even 15 years ago.
Right, okay, because there's, oftentimes I'll be driving around, and not just in our community, but a lot of places, and especially in the dark, you realize there's a sign there, but you didn't see it until you were already by it, And, I mean, a lot of times that's a real safety hazard, so. I don't know that would end up being the premier thing that we would want to address with the ARPA funds, but I thought that if we do have some needs there, that would be a good thing to end up adjusting.
Councilmember Kennedy?
I'd previously brought up the suggestion, since it's a fairly large sum of money, to address something that requires a large sum of money, and as opposed to a project or a expenditure that you could address on a phased approach. And so I've talked about replacing the bridge that's needs to be replaced over in Oak Creek subdivision. I've also brought up the fact that there are 1 or 2 bridges also on the walking trail throughout the city that could stand to be replaced, and it would be a fair amount of money to do that, and it's a project that really doesn't lend itself to being done on a phased basis. It's from beginning to end kind of thing. So I'd like to just throw that out there and have that included in the mix.
Yeah, and as we've, I guess, moved forward in this process over the last couple years, non-entitlement units, which the city of South Lyon is classified, which means we get our funding from the state of Michigan funneled through the federal government. We have less restrictive guidelines, though we still have guidelines. And infrastructure projects are allowable expenses. So at first we weren't sure we'd be able to tackle something like that, but that is definitely something that would be allowed at this point, so.
That's great. Hope it works out. Thanks.
Councilmember Hanson?
So I know that we brought this up when originally we were considering what to use the funds for. Public Wi-Fi for the city, even in the parks and that sort of thing. I still love that idea, especially having gone to school in Marquette where they had public Wi-Fi citywide. My question in regards to the funding would not necessarily be related to purchasing equipment, installing that sort of thing. That's cut and dry. Is the city able to estimate, X number of years we can put aside this amount of money to pay for internet access for that number of years? Or because obviously the funds have to be used by 2026, but if we're mandating it for, paying for the internet access, is that something the city can do, like put into a fund that's on a separate GL for just paying for the internet, or?
We would have to come up with a separate funding process for that. So the sustainability is the huge issue. For any project like that, it would be great to be able to offer that to the community, but then we would need to seek out some sort of funding source for the sustainability, because after the 2026 mark, the expenditures related to those $1.2 million ARPA funds would be done. So that might be something, if we wanted to tackle that project, we would need to build into this year's budget process, because we would certainly want to start working on that now.
That was my concern. I mean, we could use the funds until 2026, but then after that, well, guess what? Somebody has to pick up the tab for Comcast or AT&T or whatever.
Correct.
So.
And we would hate to just say, okay, well, that was great. We had the Wi-Fi for 2 years, but it's gone now.
Right.
Yeah.
I figured I'd ask.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Could the ARPA funds be used, do you think, to make improvements in the farmer's market?
So that was an area I was looking at as well, which would fall under Downtown Development Authority and Economic Development. So that is a category where, yes, funds have been approved in other communities that we could look into doing. So it wouldn't specifically be spelled out as like a market or a farmer's market project, but more of a DDA, economic development, or small business project is what that would have to be classified. And that would be considered like incentivizing or retaining small businesses to encourage people to pursue those. So whether or not they have a storefront or not,
What do you
if
think?
that makes sense.
I just wondered what improvements he was thinking.
And Nate did actually bring that up when I had discussions with him regarding that for the downtown, was, improving that particular parking lot, which could mean, complete resurfacing, improvement drainage, improving other areas within the downtown. We also talked about a facade improvement program that we could initiate for a few years also that would directly affect and directly help businesses within our community, and not just necessarily downtown, but overall economic development throughout the whole city. Putting money in this fund, allowing businesses to take advantage of these funds if they use them within specific guidelines for improvements, that they stay here for so many years, that sort of thing. Because what you don't want to do is provide somebody $3,000 to put in a sign, and 6 months later they decide that they want to move to Novi. So we don't want anything like that to happen. But we can put in those kind of restrictions as well.
Are we getting to the point where maybe we should start outlining where we would like these funds to go? I mean, instead of just looking at this like, I would like to see economic development. I would like to see some things in the downtown. I would like to see anything that we can do recreationally. I mean, those would be my key areas that I would be interested in. But I'm only one person, but maybe everybody could toss a couple things into the hat. So at least whatever we're interested in, if you come across something in another community, you can say, well, Councilwoman Kurzweil brought this up. This is interesting what they're doing in Cincinnati. Maybe we'll talk about this. Or maybe you'll find a community and say, well, this community, this was not ruled appropriate, so we can cross this one off. But at least can we start with what we're thinking? Because for me, I'm pretty focused. So I don't need to see the broad range of everything that's being approved. Because for me, it's right in that downtown, and it's recreational. So, but that's.
Well, I think if the city manager's okay with that, maybe we could have each council member provide, I mean, I've taken notes while we've been talking, just a quick email to Paul, letting him know maybe your top 2 or 3 items, and then I can come up with some things for the next meeting where we could talk a little bit further, maybe during the budget discussion, or we could have it as a different agenda item, and,
Right.
and I could give you some updates on what I have found.
And we
in
can put
other
some price
communities.
tags on some things also from what the staff has provided, and give this list a complete list of what everybody wants to potentially look at.
Then and I would assume that department heads would be included in on this, because they also have an opportunity to request certain items. So at least we can prioritize a little bit and begin saying, okay, maybe this can be covered by the budget, maybe this we can cover by ARPA, maybe,
Right, and I've met with each one of the department heads. They kind of itemize for me, and they put down price tags of some of these items as well. And I wanted to talk to you about your list. We'll compile that list and let all of you see it, and then you start to look at some of these things about what we can potentially put together or prioritize. And, there's other things that come up, like Councilmember Kennedy mentioned, that bridge. That's a $200,000 bridge that's going to be replaced. We have met with the county, and the engineers have, and talked with them about what are our options for replacing that bridge. Do we still have to have that long span, or can you be using box culverts to put in a bridge that isn't as expensive, based upon, the certain topography, based upon the drainage that's running through there, based upon the floral and fauna. There's a lot of things that are involved when you're putting something within a wetland. But some of there's going to be some unexpected items. And we were trying to think of items that can actually make an impact. The public can see, people can see. The department might not necessarily have otherwise have gotten something, and it may have taken years in order to get, but we think these funds should be used for something that are going to make an impact on our community.
I tend to agree with that. Everyone took the COVID ride together with us, and so the funds should be something that the community is going to know where the money went. I did have a quick question for you, Patricia, something that was on my mind, and this, maybe we do a majority of the money and earmark it for something like that that's going to be well known in the community, like the bridges. That's a great That's a great idea. One of the things that kept popping up into my mind about this, and whether or not the ARPA funds can be spent on it or not, it's still something that I would like to talk about when we get to the budget in the spring, is some of our older buildings, as we're seeing with this building right now, have long been overdue for a little bit of a TLC upgrade. One of my things that I would like us to investigate is bulking up the security on those locations for our employees, and just making sure the people that are there are supposed to be there, starting with that, and kind of going from there, whether it's is something as small as maybe adding like key fobs that we see next door on that half of the building, or something like that, where maybe a chunk of the money could go towards something like that to get us going, in focusing on kind of beefing up a little bit of the personal security for our employees at all of our different locations. So,
And the infrastructure that's
Yes.
within those buildings. And that
Exactly
is
right.
definitely something
Okay.
that has been utilized by other communities.
Okay.
Security and even IT security,
And that
related
was-
defenses.
That's
all
another one.
departments.
I'm very glad you brought that up, Patricia, because one of the things that I see happen to us from time to time, and I'll always know when it happens because I'll start getting emails from everyone across the departments, is the phishing scams, where it looks like the email has come from me.
Yeah.
But unless you look very closely and look at the email, it's actually not. And so I think some sort of beefed up email internet security for our employees, because some of these fakes anymore are really good. I mean, it will look legit, whether it's from Microsoft or Google or our service provider for our internet and email, and it only takes one. And then all of a sudden you can be kind of being held for a ransom in some of these cases. So I would definitely like to try and at least look into a little bit of that for internet and email security, and then physical security for the buildings as well. So, Councilmember Kennedy, and then I'll come back to you, Councilmember Kibble.
So I think the other part that's kind of important, along with the use of the ARPA funds, are a couple of the SEMCOG grants that I've been discussing with City Manager Zelnick. Okay, the first one is for about $10 million that they're offering for trail and sidewalk construction, repair, etc. Another one that was just brought up, a fairly large sum of money for recreational improvements, meaning the improvements over in Volunteer Park. And I know that Paul has already had discussions about possibly using about $100,000 in that grant, if he can get it, for Volunteer Park over there. And it also allows for the installation of additional recreational equipment at existing parks. So there's things that we could do with that money at McCaddy Park as well. So I think we kind of need to look at, where we can, what best fits the suggestions that are being made. And I know that it's election season. I know that that's going to take precedence right now until, for another few weeks here. But after that's done, I really hope that we can pursue those grants, because they could be a nice complement to those ARPA funds for us.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of those can be used as matching grants as well with the ARPA funds. So if we were awarded a certain amount through those, then we could match that dollar amount through our ARPA funds, and that is something that the government encourages. So.
Yeah, one of those was I think a 20% match, and the other was no match. I don't remember which was which.
Okay.
So
That's a great point, Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
I was wondering, was there more consideration for the development of 390? I know that we've got a rendering of, some kind of a footprint on there, but that seems like it'd end up being a nice augment to the entrance of the downtown.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and these funds are within the use of that?
Yes,
Yeah.
because, the park improvements, the enhancement for, community, Patricia just touched on it basically about, the enhancements for a downtown, for a community. There was a discussion regarding revenue loss for the community and that sort of thing, and you expanded your uses to almost be just about anything. And it's very easy for us to prove some of those things. And right now, I think we've gotten just over $100,000 on what we deem to be about a $400,000 park. But it was as mentioned, Patricia mentioned regarding the matching portion of grants, when you start to talk about, even if they say there's only a 20% match, but when you tell them, that you're going to use a 50% match, there's a better opportunity for you to actually receive that additional grant.
Sure.
And as the one that Councilmember Kennedy mentioned, the other one through SEMCOG, we had looked at, for one of the trails was actually widening a trail. If you widen a trail from 8 feet to 10 feet, there was a great opportunity to receive that grant. And that was a section that we're actually looking at by Michigan Seamless Tube, that we think that would be the best opportunity at that location to widen the trail.
And that could really use a overdue, yeah.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
On the grant issue, I think one of those grants, the application date opens today
Yep.
on October 24th.
That's a Sparks grant.
Yeah, the Sparks grant, yeah. So I was looking at those grants and, so I think this is good timing for us to be having this discussion because those application doors are opening, as we speak, as we sit here tonight. So, yeah.
Councilmember Dill, go ahead.
Thank you. I saw on here that when I used it for some kind of, I don't know if it was bonus funding or something for emergency workers.
Yes.
I don't know that we want to go down this path, but I did read the chief's report that we have had some problems with recruiting and having trouble with that. I mean, I don't know if it's even possible, but could you use it for something like signing bonuses or something like that?
Yes, and that's kind of what I was alluding to those, because just for reference, in 2020, we did receive a grant through Oakland County, which was funded through the state of Michigan, through COVID dollars from the federal government to give bonus pay to our emergency service workers. So it was our fire and our police department for those that went above and beyond during the crunch time of 2020. So we kind of did do a similar program, but what other communities have been expanding upon at this point is how can we recruit and retain those that we have? Because especially when you're a paid on call or combination fire department, you're losing good people to full-time departments. And what can we do to encourage people to either come and stay? And what I have seen in Michigan quite a bit, and then also across the country, is that, so whatever I would say the normal rate is that we pay them, we give them a signing bonus after 100 days or so many days. Communities give them then an additional incentive pay beyond that. Other communities have raised their minimum wage that they pay their entry-level firefighters. I don't know if that's as sustainable because, again, after 2026, then you have to keep that up. Or otherwise, do you just say, oh, all the new people that come in get paid less? You don't really want to do that. So there's ways that we could probably, think that through to encourage.
Thank you.
And one of the best ways that we can do recruitment also is another use of these funds is for purchasing emergency response equipment. So people coming to the community want to work for a community that do have the updated equipment. We talk about the ladder truck. We talk about other sort of gear that is being used on a regular basis, or the training centers that they use, the smokehouses, that sort of stuff. That helps people, when you start taking apart cars, you start reenacting certain things. We don't have a lot of fires here, thank God. But these individuals do, in fact, when they're able to use those pieces of equipment and, better chance of obviously saving lives and saving property, those are good recruitment because they see what we have and they're very excited about that. You have even just the work that was being done in the fire station recently, walking in a fire station, trying to determine whether I want to work for this department or not, seeing the nice floor, seeing the nice fire truck, seeing the nice equipment, the personnel that you have there. It's a team and family environment, and they see that you take care of their employees.
All right, if no one else has anything, I think that's a great kickoff discussion for that. I know, hopefully this will be kind of get the ball rolling on us, getting some plans set up for that. So thank you, Patricia. Thank you, everyone. That was a good discussion on that. I look forward to moving ahead with that down the road. So we'll move on to the budget this evening. Did anyone else have anything on the budget while we have Patricia at the microphone? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. At this time, we'll open the floor for public comment. Please remember to state your name and address, and remember our 2-minute time limit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 items left to mention to council. We have a new director at the Providence Clinic. That's a revelation because and just happened last week. She's going to be my physician, and her name's Dr. Shepard. She's from Southfield, and she remembered me from emergency surgery in the springtime in Southfield. Her predecessor was Dr. Bartell, who was also director for 9 years, I believe, 8 years maybe. And she engineered the improvements that went on there, which was $500,000. Okay, plus the facade on the outside. And it planned over 4 or 5 years, and it started before we had the abatement, tax abatement opportunities on the table. So Dr. Shepard is the new director, and hopefully they can put the place in shape. Over half of the staff quit and moved on, and that's rare in the medical profession, okay, over the last year. Okay, moving on to the next item and last item, my favorite project, the tube mill. Okay, I talked to Tom Slater this afternoon. He called me, and I left a message. I wanted to have some happy news about the tube mill. And he informed me that the union contract for the next 3 years has been settled effectively and is mutually agreeable to both parties. And that's a big item on the table. Also, Mr. Slater also indicated that he's been working with, I assume, Paul, the city manager here, on 2 projects that may have been in my plan, and we're going to, try to complete them before the end of the year. And they need more employees. They're still short about 20 to 30 employees. So that's all I had and I hope the information was useful to you. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Richards. All right, if we don't have anyone else for public comment, we will close the floor for public comment, and we're going to move on to the manager's report with City Manager Zelnick.
Thanks, Mayor. At an upcoming meeting, we will have discussions on the agenda, another ordinance change to discuss the purchasing limits that come before council for approval. We brought that up at a couple meetings, and we're going to put something together for your review to see if that discussion and that change should actually occur. Also, at the council meeting in November, we'll have a bond authorization resolution as it relates to an upcoming road bond. This will enable the city to do a publication of notice of sale in January and closing of the bonds in February for the use of this coming spring and summer for road improvements in South Lyon. The City Hall work continues in renovation of this particular building. They've had some delays based upon the weather. We expect on Wednesday that they'll actually be working within the parking lot, so the only entrance to the parking lot will be the south entrance to the City Hall parking lot and administration building, and individuals will be rerouted to the back of the building to enter the building, and there'll be proper signage put there for the public and everyone to know. The DPW paving project continues, and so if you're out there by the yard, you'll see concrete work and seeing equipment being brought in on a everyday basis. The last item relates to one of the items that was discussed during the discussion regarding ARPA funds. I've discussed with Parks and Rec Commission about the lack of a name for the proposed new park on South Lafayette. As members of the Parks and Rec Commission, I asked them to look at what they thought would be the parameters for coming up with the name of the park. The criterion, the thought that should be used in determining a name were geographical identification, descriptive name, local natural geographic features, historical or cultural significance. A couple of names that have been discussed by the commission were Lafayette Park, and the other one was Thompson's Corners. As council members, I ask that you let me know your thoughts on creating a new name for this particular park, and we can also put this on a future agenda. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of the members have.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Paul, do we have any idea when all the broken trash can lids are going to be replaced throughout the downtown?
No, I don't. I know Nate and I had discussions about that a couple weeks ago. I know some of the items were brought up, I'm trying to think if it was during Pumpkin Fest, I believe, regarding that. And I know we discussed regarding ordering some more around the town, but I will talk with Nate about that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kivel.
You know what, never mind.
Okay. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you. Paul, do you have an opinion of this rapid transit tax, of how it will benefit our community or will not benefit our community?
From what I reviewed and from what I've seen, there's the proposed .95 mils, which is to be levied for all of Oakland County, is going to be on the November election. That's going to generate, I believe it's about $65 million in its first year. We currently have the People's Express for South Lyon. None of those funds could be used for People's Express or would be included with the other geographical facilities or transportation units that are throughout the county. NODA, which is the North Oakland Transportation Authority. There is OPC, that's Rochester Hills, Oakland Township. But the People Express, which is used in different areas, at least to the west, is not included and not necessarily allowed, or funding could be used for that. We receive $10,000 to $12,000 through smart credits that we get every year, and those funds are available for use with People's Express. We have a contract with People's Express. Then we have this supplement of money that we get for the smart credits, and that pays for all the services that we are provided here in the city. The group that put this all together was basically the county commissioners voted on it, and I'll just as a statement, our local representative, Phil Weipert, actually voted no on this particular millage. And I have not had, full discussions, all the details why Commissioner Weipert actually voted no. But what I see is that it does not benefit his communities like it does other communities throughout the county. I did not see the means at which transportation would go from 8 Mile Road out to on Grand River or something and come through our area, and people would go back and forth, because this millage is just for the county, just Oakland County. So the limits of it are going to be, the northern portions of Oakland County go towards Genesee County, or go towards the south, or going for west or to Macomb County. So if there is a transportation authority or transportation, you will only be able to provide transportation within the county with those particular funds. So this is being initiated through Oakland County Commissioners. They all voted on it, and that's how it got on the ballot. There isn't a lot of detail on it. There's really no major plan. I think there's 4 or 5 points that they talked about. 60% of the dollars are going to be used to fund SMART, because they do not, the SMART millage is not going to be continuing after this particular date. There's no backup plan if that doesn't happen. There's no direct funding for, us within the city of South Lyon. Our taxable value is around $470 million. So based upon that and the .95 mils, we're talking about almost $450,000 of money that will be coming out of South Lyon that will be going to fund this plan for this transit group. And, based upon that, I mean, the money that we pay, some $80-some thousand for the contract with People's Express, I mean, 5 or 6 times the amount of money, and that's going to benefit other areas around the county. I'm only disappointed because I do not see that there's enough detail where people can make an informed decision based upon what these dollars are going to be used for. It's already kind of failed in the past, but there's not enough details that show how this money can be used in South Lyon, and I don't see anything. They talk about increased services and that kind of thing, but People's Express is not one of those services that they're actually going to be provide these micro groups that they talked about. But for us right now in the city of South Lyon, I do not see the benefit. I mean, there may be a benefit for individuals who are working in certain areas. They go to a particular location, they transportation to another location in perhaps more populous cities. Because, you know, transportation, I mean, is extremely important. Mass transit is a good thing overall for the public. But for the city or the South Lyon, I don't necessarily see that. But I haven't been provided enough data that would prove otherwise.
Well, I'm getting a lot of questions, as you may suspect, from seniors who are absolutely petrified because this will be the largest tax increase that they've seen in their lifetime. And this is for 10 years. So there's no backing out of it if it passes. And my understanding is, talking to a couple of commissioners up in Oakland County, is that the service run is really going to be out of Pontiac. It's not coming anywhere close to South Lyon. And what the commissioners did was they said certain communities cannot opt out. So South Lyon can't opt out, Lyon Township can't opt out. So even if we vote no and everybody else in the county votes yes, this is going to be devastating. I mean, this is a huge, this is huge.
And in order for a community to opt out, they would have had to put together a transportation authority. So you look at jurisdictions, and certain jurisdictions opt out, but that didn't happen. So all our money could go for funding this, but I don't necessarily see that benefit. $450,000 would go a long way in South Lyon for providing other means of transportation. If we're paying $80-some thousand right now for People's Express and what they provide.
Well, you add the 80, and you're talking over $500,000 a year, you know, going out of our pockets here in South Lyon for transportation, 80 of which goes to People's Express, but the rest of it goes someplace else. Now, it's also my understanding, I could be wrong, some of this money is actually going into Detroit for their bus system to help bail them out.
I did not see that at all. I
Okay.
thought the money could only be used within Oakland County. I don't know what other kind of supplemental agreements they could possibly have.
That's where
but
it is.
What I studied on this, those are the basic things that I found out. Somebody can give additional information, but you can go online at oakdove.com and you can see the locations of where the lines of transit are going to go, what areas, and what are the other organizational groups that are providing micro areas within the county transportation. And People's Express is not one of those groups. So it looks like this western part of the county and northwest part of the counties are going to be completely left out.
This
Like
is
to chime in
rough.
here.
This is rough. Okay.
Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
The historic obstacle had always been at Farmington. So everybody was able to opt out because Farmington wouldn't allow SMART to end up working in their jurisdiction. So everybody on the west side thought that they were safe from not having people from other communities getting access to be able to come into their community on public transportation. Obviously, the people at Oakland County think that that's a step in the right direction. I'd like us to entertain the idea of entertaining what we could end up getting from it by exhaustively trying to expand that. Rather than saying we're going to end up pitching 450,000, or what was it, 450 million?
Approximately $450,000 of South Lyon funds will go towards that. You know, and they talked about that they want to expand other areas, but they have not defined this area as an area for expansion. They've been looking at the other area of the county. And it's very hard for a voter to say, well, show me what the benefit is to our community. Well, we don't know what it's going to be yet. We just want you to vote yes, and then we'll try to figure that out later. And that's very disappointing if you're asking somebody, to make to go for an improvement.
I couldn't agree more. But nonetheless, if it's push comes to shove and they end up getting access to those funds, I want us to start really coming up with a plan to figure out how we can push to get something moving in our direction. So,
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
When I was doing my research on this, it's also my understanding that there's not even a board in place at all.
Yeah, the Board of
So-
Commissioners are the group that's supposed to be overseeing it, but they've not talked about the plan, who they're gonna hire, who are the personnel, what the organizational structure is, or anything like
So
that.
they could be collecting money for 3 years and just putting it into a bank until they decide who's going to run it, what authority's going to run it, because there's no structure in place right now at all. And that, to me, is dangerous when you are handing over $65 million to a bunch of politicians that don't have a plan in place. You know, I mean, this is tough. I'm not against public transportation, but it has to be far more defined, articulated, and planned when you're asking the highest tax increase in my lifetime. $65 million? That's a lot of money with no plan in place, except we know it's not coming out here.
Right, and sometimes the overall good is better than perhaps if it's just looking at a small, area just of South Line, that if it can benefit the region, it can
Yeah.
do more for jobs, it can do a lot of things. So yes, those sort of things are definitely important. Regional transit is important, but when gets decided in an August meeting before the Board of Commissioners and said, we're gonna put this on the November ballot, where's the detail? That information should have been discussed, at least I feel, to the communities in advance. People should have come in here, this is what we're planning on doing, show me how it's gonna benefit our community. They still can't do that.
Well, here's an additional problem, and I feel bad for Lyon Township, because now you have residents in Lyon Township that potentially could, are looking at several increases. They're looking for a millage for fire, they're looking for a millage for their library, and they're looking for, if this tax, the rapid transit gets passed, they are going to be hit over there in Lyon Township. And you feel bad, because what's going to happen is municipalities now are going to have to sit there and say, well, maybe this is the last road, bond that we pass. Because our bond is going to last 10 years, and so is this going to last 10 years. How much can you push taxpayers? I can't go and advocate that we increase any millages to help pay for volunteer park, or to raise some additional money that we may want in our community if this thing passes. You can't do it. It's really going to strap local municipalities.
I just imagine that use of $450,000 and how it could enhance our regional transit that we have in our community, what we could provide if we had those additional funds.
It is what it is. So.
Anyone else have anything for the city manager report? All right, we'll move on to council comments tonight. And Councilmember Dilg, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I have is that I don't think we come back before we vote. So I just wanted to remind everybody to please get out and vote. Please register if you are not registered. And I think it's, one of the more important elections. And I think everybody's opinion needs to be weighed in. And I know people get tired and sometimes people blow that off, but we need to hear from everybody. So it's a majority, it's a majority rules kind of thing. Don't let a few people speak for you, and get out and really read and comprehend what's being put in front of you, and research your candidates, and make the best decisions, and don't just vote based on a sign you see across the street. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dilg. Councilmember Hanson.
Well, I wanted to apologize to everyone for not being in attendance at the last meeting. When everybody was standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, I had a temperature a little bit over 100. Probably would have called into work if it wasn't Indigenous Peoples Day. So I was here in spirit. Loved the new video system, though. The YouTube video was able to bring me up to speed in HD, and the cameras are working amazingly. So I was very happy to have that resource. Last Monday, I was feeling well enough to attend the first German Fest with the Chamber of Commerce, and several of my colleagues here attended with me. It was a great first event, maybe an annual event. Well attended, over 75 business members and local professionals. enjoying some great German food at the South Lyon Hotel and some great music as well. So kudos to the Chamber for putting that on, and glad to see so many folks out in attendance. On a more somber note, I wanted to remind everyone that the war in Ukraine is still going on. We are at day 242 of the war in Ukraine, and everyone, if they're able to, can certainly do their part. If it's as small as buying a pint of beer at the Witch's Hat that benefits the World Food Bank, or even making a direct donation to benefit the people of Ukraine, we're all kind of thinking about them in our thoughts and hearts, and I hope that it ends sooner than it continues going on. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hanson. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would like to echo Councilmember Hanson's comments about Ukraine. I quit watching the news for a while and just turned it on recently, and the news just isn't getting any better. But what it does is it just reinforces how lucky we are to live in this country. We may disagree with one another. We may see things differently through a different set of eyes, but we are an extremely, extremely fortunate group of individuals that live in probably the greatest country in the whole world. I can go home at night and I don't have to worry about somebody dropping a bomb on my house. I can walk freely in my streets without being mugged. This is a great country, and we need to fight for it. We need to fight for what's good in this country and accept the diverse opinions and understand that we don't all speak with one voice. We speak with many voices, but at the end of the day, we're all Americans. On that note, I wanted to say had a great time at the South Lyon Hotel. I was there twice this week, last week. So the German Fest was absolutely very good. Enjoyed it. Corey did a great job. And then I was there for a comedy night, which was a fundraiser for Active Faith. And that, again, was just a packed night. The hotel is just doing incredible business. And I want to thank Corey and the crew, and he did tell me that they're up to full staff. And just want to remind everybody that they are having their Halloween party on Saturday, October 29th. Full costume, and here come the judge, because the costumes are going to be judged. So that is going to be a wild night at the hotel. So enjoy, everybody. Have a good Halloween.
Thank you, Councilmember Kurtzwell. Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, tonight I want to congratulate the South Lyon High School girls swim and dive team for finishing in first place in the Lakes Valley Conference with a 5-0 standing. I also want to wish them the very best as they move on to the conference competition on November 4th and 5th. I know that the South Lyon community is certainly hoping that they'll go all the way. Next, I want to welcome 2 new businesses to the city of South Lyon. The first is the Painted Crock Pottery and Art Studio that opened in King Plaza. They offer paint your own pottery along with other crafting projects and have something for all ages, so make plans now to stop in soon. The second new business is Mark Pagel's Edward Jones Financial Advisor, who recently opened his own office in the Brookdale Plaza. Mark is a longtime resident of the South Lyon community and has been providing financial advice for a number of years. So if you're looking for advice for dealing with the challenges in the current economy, stop by and talk with Mark. Finally, just another reminder about the downtown trick-or-treat for Thursday, October 27th, from 6 to 8, with the pup parade between 5 and 8, actually stepping off at 6 o'clock. Registration taking place at between 5 and 6. So put on your costumes and come down for an evening of fun. And one last note, it looks like Diane's Doll Shop will reopen on the 25th of November. So that's good news for the downtown. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo a couple of comments. Get out and vote. It's very important. I, too, attended the chamber events for the German Fest. It was a lot of fun. Hope to attend a few more. And this is our last farmer's market for the season. It's Halloween weekend. A lot of the vendors dress up, and we're all passing out candy. So bring the kids down. Be a lot of fun. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mosier. Great reminders. Councilmember Kibble.
I think everything's been pretty much covered, so I hope everybody enjoys themselves on Halloween. It's always a lot of fun to watch all those little kids walking down the street, and it's just a gas. So that's all I really have.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully they can get even just half the nice weather we had for next Monday that we had today. And I know I feel like the last 3 or 4 have been pretty rough weather-wise with the sideways freezing rain and blowing wind. So fingers crossed for good weather for downtown on Thursday and obviously for next Monday. Just a couple things. Friday night, South Lyon East, South Lyon Lions football game was incredible. The atmosphere was just awesome. I mean, it's not Texas high school football, but it's pretty close, as good as we get here. And congratulations to the Cougars. They went on to win 27-21, I believe was the final. And their reward for that is they will get a rematch with the Lions on Friday at South Lyon East. So if you missed last week's barn burner, I would encourage you to get there and get there early. I got there at about 6 o'clock last week, and they were parking in the field on Johns Road. So I may or may not have taken some liberties and found a better spot. So no, honestly, it was great. The kids, I mean, anytime South Lyon East play each other, I would encourage you to, the student sections are so much fun. If you haven't been able to join us for one of those basketball games or football games, Friday night should be a great one. So hopefully the weather will be great for that. Unfortunately, we're going to lose one of our teams in the first round, though. So the winner will get the winner of the Milford-Dexter game. So one thing came in my mail this week that I did want to remind everyone about, too. And obviously, I want to remind everyone about our local charities as well. As the weather starts to turn, you know, we saw a little bit of it a week ago or so. You know, people sometimes need some help, whether that's donating to our friends at Active Faith or any of our other charities that help people get through the winter. One of the ones that I try to annually help if I can is the Heat and Warmth Fund, and that's through, you know, DTE and consumers, you know, helping folks keep their heat on. So if you're looking for something to be involved with, you know, this winter that isn't necessarily just directly in the community, that's a good one to try and help out, because I'm sure there's going to be some folks that are going to need some help with some heating bills this winter. So with that, I will not be looking for a motion to adjourn this evening. We are going to be looking for a motion to go into closed session. So Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you. I move to consider attorney-client privileged communication in accordance with MCL 15268 1H, and to consult with legal counsel regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with Oakland County Circuit Court case number 21-19-0850 Douglas versus South Lyon, MCL 15268 1E.
I'll second.
City Clerk Deaton, could I get a roll call vote, please?
Mosier,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes?
Hibble,
Yes.
Kurzweil,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Dilg,
Yes.
Elchat.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. To those in the crowd, if we will be asking everyone to step out, and then if we will be taking any actions, we will make sure to open the doors for everyone to come back in. So have a great night, everyone.